It's one of the greatest stories ever told, a delight for generations of schoolchildren. But could Noah and the Ark actually be true? Three American Christians were convinced it was. They were prepared to face danger and death.
Its name in Turkish is Ararat. It's the mountain of pain.
People have been killed over the years. We had one man that was shot.
He was cut, literally cut from head to toe from all the rocks.
But it was worth all that pain. These men were on a quest for far more than personal glory. They were willing to risk their lives because they believed all the events in the Bible actually took place. Finding Noah's Ark would be the ultimate proof. Of all the tales in the Bible, Noah and his Ark is perhaps the most fabulous. It has been a staple for Hollywood ever since the movies began, not to mention a dominant subject for Western art. Fed up with their sins, a vengeful God decides to wipe out the entire human race and start again. The one good man on earth, Noah, and his family will be saved. God orders them to build a giant ark, 300 cubits, roughly 450 feet long, and to take into it a male and female of every animal, so that when the flood is over, life can start again. But is this all just a story, or could it possibly be true? In the 1980s, there was one American who was determined to find out. Even if it meant searching for an ancient boat on a massive mountain in Bandit country where the locals worshipped a very different god. But then this explorer was used to hostile environments.
Liftoff. We have liftoff at 9:34 landing some daylight time.
Colonel James Irwin was one of the pioneers of space travel.
Oh boy, it's beautiful out here. What? It's a nice little crater, isn't it?
In 1971, he was the lunar module pilot of Apollo 15 and became only the 8th person to walk on the surface of the moon.
Look at that. I think we found what we came for. Crystal rock, huh? Yes, sir. You better believe it.
He spent 3 days there, moonwalking and collecting samples, including the Genesis rock.
Joe, this crater is a gold mine.
And there might be diamonds in the next one.
To the untrained eye, it looked like just another rock, but its large crystals showed it to be a section of primal lunar crust, formed during the earliest history of the solar system. It was a key to many mysteries. It stands as a major clue in unraveling the formative processes of the moon, the Earth, and the planet.
That rock made Jim Irwin famous. It was named after the book of Genesis, the first part of the Bible which tells the story of the creation of the world. According to the Bible, this happened some 6,000 years ago, but when scientists actually examined the rock, they announced it was a lot older, some several billion years. But what the public didn't know was that something else took place to Colonel Irwin on the moon, which was far more profound, at least for him.
Contact. Man. Roger, Roger, Falcon.
What drove him these last 20 years of his life was the experience on the moon. He would have problems on the moon, like the lunar rover wouldn't work.
The lunar rover was the vehicle that had been developed especially to cope with the precarious conditions on the moon's surface. But it developed a major problem. The steering wouldn't work.
I don't have any front steering, Joe. Stuck with rear steering, Dave. Yeah.
The mission was in jeopardy. had come all that way for nothing.
Okay, we're moving forward, Joe.
Roger.
It was an all-wheel drive, and not all the wheels were working, and they worked on it and couldn't figure it out.
Nobody at Mission Control, a 250,000 miles away in Houston, Texas, had any idea what to do. That night, Jim Irwin prayed to God.
Oh, it's nice to be outside where you can stretch a little bit.
The next morning, his prayers were answered.
August 1st, Scott and Irwin prepared for their second day on the moon. And as Scott checked the inoperative forward steering of the rover,
You know what I bet you did last night, Joe? You let some of those Marshall guys come up here and fix it, didn't you? It works, Dave? Yes, sir. It's working, my friend. Beautiful.
It worked fine. They didn't do anything, they just started, and he says there was instances throughout the flight where he just felt God's hand was so present.
Oh, look at the mountains today, Jim, when they're all sunlit. Isn't that beautiful? Really is. By golly, that's just super. Dave, I'm reminded of a favorite biblical passage from Psalm. I look unto the hills, from whence cometh my help.
And he kept looking over his shoulder because he just felt somebody else was there. And he later said it had to be God. And it really impacted his life, and it changed his whole perspective. And so when he came back from the moon, he dedicated the rest of his life to spreading the message of who God was.
Jim Irwin was now a man with a new mission. He retired from space travel and set up his high flight ministry. He wanted people to become committed to the Bible, to believe, like him, that every phrase was directly inspired by God, that every word of it was true. Jim Irwin became a creationist.
Thank you, Lord. It's so good to be able to brag on our God, isn't it? He's higher than any other. Hallelujah. The word said he inhabits our praises. Give him praise right now. Let him inhabit where you are right now in your life.
Scientists have criticized the views of creationists for decades,
Give him praise this morning.
but that hasn't stopped their churches being full every Sunday. Others might ridicule them, but here in Manassas, Northern Virginia, they are quite convinced that evolution is wrong. They believe that men and women were created just 6,000 years ago, just as the Bible says. And what better way to prove it than to find the ship of Noah? It would transform not only our understanding of the origin of species, it would even be clear evidence for the existence of God. Now that was a challenge worthy of Jim Irwin's enthusiasm and commitment. It would combine his love of adventure with his new commitment to God. He read his Bible more carefully than ever before.
If it said it in the Bible, it was fact for Jim. And so the fact that in Genesis, it speaks about the Ark of Noah, and it just stirred inside of him the thrill of exploration. I can be a part of something of biblical proportions that would affect the whole of mankind. So he delved into all he could to find where it might be and how to go about finding it.
So in between meeting world leaders and heads of state, he planned his second great expedition. This time, not with fellow astronauts, but with family and friends, including his new son-in-law.
We were on a run up in Boulder, Colorado. We came to a high spot overlooking the city, and he goes, you know, I'm thinking of heading to Turkey to look for the Ark of Noah. Would you be interested?
Interested, John could hardly contain his enthusiasm.
To me, it was an adventure with the man who had walked on the moon. what would you say, but how soon? When can we go? Tomorrow?
But if space travel had taught Jim Irwin anything about exploration, it was the importance of preparation. And so they started practicing on the hills near their home in Colorado Springs.
We spent the next year getting in shape physically and preparing and going to the store and buying the equipment that we would need. It was great fun.
But for Colonel Irwin, it was much more than that. There could be no greater prize than finding Noah's Ark. It truly would be one small step for man, one giant step for mankind. And the amazing thing was, the Bible had told him where to look. The book of Genesis was quite clear. After the Great Flood, Noah's Ark had come to rest here on the mountains of Ararat. Not quite as remote as the moon, but close. On this volcanic rock, it can be 32 degrees in the summer, minus 20 in the winter. The top is permanently covered in snow and ice.
It's a hard mountain to climb. It has a 45-degree angle. Though we go zigzag back and forth like a mountain goat, it's still hard on your heart and your endurance.
Climbers suffer frostbitten toes and fingers. 2 died of hypothermia in 2006.
This mountain goes up and down with canyons, crevices, gorges that are very, very dangerous.
Even in the relatively benign foothills, there are wolf dogs and brown bears.
It's a fairly hostile environment. We call it the rock pile, and its name in Turkish is Ararat, and it's the mountain of pain.
These hazards, though, do not put off the most determined explorers. If anything, they enhance its appeal.
The climbers come from everywhere in the world, and they come for different reasons. Some people are just mountain climbers, and they go around the world climbing the high summits. Mount Ararat is 5,137 meters, so it's a high mountain. Other people come because they're searching for Noah's Ark.
But few were as serious and committed as Jim Irwin. He needed to be. His task was huge. The mountain isn't just 25 miles wide. It is spread out over some 380 square miles. The Ark could be anywhere. Fortunately, there were some clues. People had been there before. 2,000 years ago, the Jewish historian Josephus described how local farmers would show remains of the Ark to those who are curious to see them. The 7th century Spanish saint Isidore of Seville claimed that on Mount Ararat, wood remains are to be seen even to this day. And the 14th century Venetian traveller Marco Polo passed by Ararat, calling it the Mountain of Noah's Ark. And if these reports were old and vague, there was more recent evidence. In the 1950s, the French Christian explorer Fernand Navarra spotted some timbers jutting out of a precipice. He managed to extract one and bring it down from the mountain despite suffering severe altitude sickness. But when the timber was tested, the results were inconclusive. Some tests put it at the time the Bible says the Great Flood happened, but carbon dating indicated it was much younger, probably from the 6th century AD. Still, Navarra was just one of some 200 people in the last 2 centuries who claimed to have seen the remains of the Ark. Many were local farmers who would graze their animals on the mountain in the summer months. Most of these sightings were of an Ark-like object situated between 13,000 and 16,000 feet on the north of the mountain. So this is where Jim Irwin chose to look. In the summer of 1982, he set out up the slope of Mount Ararat with a small team, including his son-in-law, John Christensen.
That first morning, we were in a base camp in a smooth plain. And we woke up and there was a rainstorm. And there was a rainbow that came right into camp. And we were like, oh man, this is going to be good, because right after the flood of Noah was the first rainbow. And we thought, this is a sign, and it's going to be good.
Jim Irwin was back in his element.
I remember him talking to a shepherd on the mountain. This man had spent his whole life as a shepherd, and now he's old and weathered. And he meets Jim, and Jim is explaining to him through the interpreter, yes, I've been on the moon. And the way he treated that man, that shepherd, was with such tenderness and compassion.
Over the next few days, hope started to fade. Every crevasse, gully, and glacier which might be hiding the remnants of an ancient boat was explored, but that rainbow never reappeared.
It was a lot tougher than we thought it was, because it's such a volcanic area, and the mountain is a lot of loose rocks, so it was really almost like 3 steps up, 1 step back. It was a hike getting up there, and it was really difficult to get your footing. You really had to concentrate on almost every step because it was all loose rock.
And they found nothing. No shape of a hidden ark, no beam of wood, not even a plank of petrified timber. Jim Irwin was completely dispirited. Worse was to follow.
He says, I'm going back to base camp, and he unfortunately broke his own rule of never hiking alone. And so he went down, and we were in communication with base camp, and they said he had never returned. And it was dusk.
The team were deeply worried. Mount Ararat was not a place to spend the night on your own.
We started out from on top, coming down as far as we could to look for him. But then it just got too dark and dangerous, so we retreated. And we waited until the next morning.
They dreaded what they might find.
And at first light, we found him down at the end of a rock field. He was unrecognizable because he had been covered with blood and hit by rocks from a rock slide. He was cut from head to toe from all the rocks.
There was no medical equipment on hand. Nobody was quite sure what to do.
They just took alcohol and poured it in all the open wounds. And when we first did it, the only sound he made was and then they shipped him from there to a hospital in Erzurum.
It was touch and go.
He had lost a lot of blood, and he was very fortunate to survive.
It was a miserable experience for a man who had gone all the way to the moon. But it did not deter him from going back several more times, always to return empty-handed.
There had been people telling him that, you know, you're going to find Noah's Ark and it's going to happen, and we all thought if there is going to be somebody who finds it, it's going to be Jim.
It was, in fact, the great disappointment of his life. The man who journeyed into space had failed on his other great journey on Earth. Jim Irwin died in 1991 of heart failure. He was only 61 years old.
I miss him a lot, a lot. To get him to laugh, it was like gold. And so I miss his laughter. I miss his heart and his compassion.
Shortly before he passed away, he said he had done all I possibly can, but the Ark continues to elude us. It was easier to walk on the moon.
I think because of his experience on the moon, that he felt the Lord had given him a platform for speaking about who Jesus was. So I think being a part of finding something biblical that was his heart's desire, I think that would have, in the end, given him more fulfillment. I do.
But Jim Irwin's failure to find the Ark did nothing to dampen down speculation. Instead, it encouraged a new generation of Christian explorers to succeed where he had drawn a blank. Deep in suburban America, searching for the Ark became fashionable, the kind of adventure any young creationist might aspire to. One who quickly became obsessed was David Fasold.
For over a year, I haven't dreamed about anything else, from the time I put my head on the pillow to the time I wake up. And that's all I think about all day long.
He grew up after the war, a time of progress and prosperity. On every street corner, there was a church. He joined the Marines and then set up a salvage company where hunting for sunken ships gave him the exploring bug. And what better boat to explore than Noah's Ark? Fasold knew the story by heart. He'd been brought up as a member of the Plymouth Brethren, an evangelical strand of Christianity known for its strict adherence to the Bible. Now he read his scriptures and pored over other ancient texts late into the night. He reached an interesting conclusion. There was nothing in Genesis that said the boat had to be on Mount Ararat itself. It could be anywhere in the area.
One of the problems we have is that all of these expeditions are of Mount Ararat. The Bible does not say Mount Ararat. The Bible says the mountains of Ararat. And that is probably a very different place.
With his knowledge of boats, Fasold thought it much more likely the Ark would have ended up further down, and that's when he discovered Durupinar. In 1959, a Turkish pilot was flying over Mount Ararat on a government mapping mission when he noticed a strange mound 17 miles south. It was shaped like a boat, and its dimensions were similar to the description of the Ark in the Bible. Its height was exactly the same. As soon as David Fasold saw it, he was sure it was a shipwreck. And he was convinced he would be the person to prove it. But there was one thing he had not taken into account. Mount Ararat has always been a lawless part of the world. A buffer between Turkey, Armenia, and Iran. Most of the people who live here are Kurds. They resent being part of Turkey.
By citizenship, they are Turkish, and their ID says they're Turkish, but they are Kurdish by their heritage and their cultural identity. They speak a different language, actually, here.
So Durupinar, the nearest town to Mount Ararat, and the base for any expedition to find the Ark, is a strange and uneasy place. It is full of Iranian smugglers, Turkish police, and Kurdish rebels who are terrorists to some, freedom fighters to others. In 1984, the Kurdistan Workers' Party, the PKK, began a military campaign which would claim over 40,000 lives.
The landscape may look like biblical times, but it's racked by present-day problems. The Turkish government has turned the entire eastern province, NATO's first line of defense, into a vast armed camp under martial law. Exotic it is, but it's also tense.
To draw attention to their struggle, the PKK targeted tourists. They did not have far to look. Colonel Jim Irwin had helped make Durupinar a magnet for a new group of Christian Ark searchers.
Well, there have been people that have been killed over the years. We had one Turkish man working for us that was shot. There have been a lot of people that have been hurt physically and financially. But we've got a job to do, and whatever the cost.
It was into this cauldron that David Fasold wandered, an innocent abroad. He knew little about Kurdistan. Few Americans did. Apart, that is, from one man who was already making a name for himself. Ron Wyatt, an ex-nurse from Kalamazoo, Michigan, had reinvented himself as a Christian explorer. He seemed to know everyone in town.
Ron talked about the Garden of God and the things that he's searching for. He wanted to search and find everything out there.
Wyatt had long been convinced that the place to look for the Ark was not Mount Ararat itself, but on the mound of Durupinar.
It shows that the vessel came right through here.
David Fasold had found a kindred soul, and he had something that Ron Wyatt hadn't, an engineer's mind. They teamed up and decided to do the kind of exhaustive exploration that would finally win over the skeptics.
Have you ever seen anything like this? Look at the grain in this thing. It almost looks like wood.
Fasold took the lead. Any boat of the time, he argued, would have needed iron rivets to hold it together and stay afloat. So all you needed to prove that the remnants of the Ark were buried underneath was to scan the earth for iron.
All right, now I'm going to skip this one.
This would show, at the very least, that there was an ancient boat there. And what boat could it be but the Ark? With cameras watching and an impressive-looking machine that some said was a molecular frequency generator, but others claimed it was just a glorified metal detector, Fasold started searching. Soon he got a result. His machine picked up a pattern of iron with a shape 450 feet long, exactly the 300 Egyptian cubits laid down in the Bible. Could this really be the Ark? David Fasold and Ron Wyatt were absolutely sure it was, as their local guide of the time remembers.
It's definitely now been decided that Noah's Ark is here. They bought a sheep from the village and they made offerings in accordance to their own religion. After their prayers were over, they said, "Let's pray according to Islam and kill this as a sacrifice." They cut that sheep up and gave it to the people, piece by piece.
That was enough to convince the locals, but Fasold and Wyatt knew the rest of the world would want a little more. In a village field at the bottom of Mount Ararat, they had discovered several anchor stones, which they now argued would have stabilized the Ark in rough seas, as had been predicted in holy texts.
Same kind of strange stone. When the early Christians found these things, they carved 8 crosses on there for the 8 survivors. This whole valley was known as the region of 8.
This was a clear sign, they said, that previous generations had regarded them as sacred. According to the Bible, there were 8 people on the Ark. Was this too much of a coincidence? It was certainly good enough for the Turks, who saw a marketing opportunity. They proclaimed Durupinar a national park and opened a visitors center. The Kurds saw an opportunity too. The PKK kidnapped Wyatt and 4 other members of the team. They were held for 3 weeks.
Ron Wyatt came home 20 pounds lighter and walking with a slight limp, but in otherwise good health despite being held hostage for 3 weeks.
When they were released unharmed, it was a major news event.
They couldn't speak our language, but we got the message right quick. They made us put our hands up, and then they took us off up through the hills.
Wyatt says he and his companions were lined up for execution.
They would have killed us.
Wyatt appeared in good health and good spirits, and he says he's convinced now more than ever he has discovered Noah's Ark.
Christian America treated them as heroes. Fasold and Wyatt's discoveries led to fame, TV specials, and best-selling books. But while Wyatt enjoyed his celebrity by waltzing around the biblical world, Fasold stayed on in Durupinar, determined to make a full exploration. He expected his fellow Ark searchers to be overjoyed the Ark had been discovered at last. Instead, they were dismissive.
Well, I didn't agree with their conclusions. I was with them in '85 when they were there, and they looked at this site, and I walked all over it. I think what it is, it's simply a mud flow around a rhyolitic formation that kind of formed, looks like a sailing ship, actually. And the Ark wasn't a sailing ship. It was a box.
And that was exactly the conclusion of the scientists who had flocked there to determine what really was underneath this strange Ark-like shape whose pictures had gone round the world. David Fasold claimed that his machines had found traces of iron underneath the mound.
That looks like iron, okay?
But that meant if there was something there, it couldn't be the Ark. Noah lived before the Iron Age.
Iron didn't exist. It wasn't used back then. Noah would have never used iron. The way you're building boats right up till 2000 BC and even later is with mortise and tenon, with wooden joints and pegs. You're not going to find iron. And so, indeed, most of Ron Wyatt's and David Fasold's claims have been repudiated.
This Ark turned out to be an entirely natural formation, only noticed because it was near to Mount Ararat. Even the anchor stones were not unusual, but found all over this ancient land. And those 8 crosses weren't Christian, but pagan. The Turks were not pleased at all. They had spent a lot of money on their visitor center. Their signs said it was the site of Noah's Ark, and that's what it remains, even today.
Noah's Ark National Park. It's a lovely walk for about an hour, hour and a half. We have a picnic lunch there. The rock goes straight up like it forms a boat. It's a very interesting rock formation. I ask everyone, what do you think, Noah's Ark? They said no, interesting rock formation.
With evident sadness, David Fasold changed his mind. Durupinar was not the site of Noah's Ark. It never was. For many years, he had believed it was much more. And when his belief faltered, he never really recovered. He died a few years later at the age of 59 of cancer, possibly brought about by those long days in the Turkish sun. Even more than Jim Irwin, the search for Noah's Ark had taken its toll. When he died, he was penniless. He'd spent all his money looking for the ancient boat. Shortly before his death, he said that intellectual brilliance is no guarantee for being wrong. But one Christian Ark hunter has no intention of being wrong. Richard Bright has given his life to searching for the Ark. He was brought up in Minnesota as a Christian, but for the first 20 years of his life, his faith had not meant a great deal. But in 1966, he had an experience which changed his life. He served in Vietnam. Under enemy fire, he directly connected to God.
I was in a certain place, and a little voice told me to move. And I told my buddy next to me, I says, "Did you say something?" He said, "No." And the voice come to me again, a little stronger, "Move." I said, "What'd you say?" "Nothing. Be quiet." The third time, I said, "We're out of here." He said, "Okay." Well, we just jumped in the vehicle, and I hadn't driven 100 feet, and the first mortar round blew the wall apart where I had been leaning against.
Bright is convinced that voice came from God and saved his life. In the 1980s, he met another person whose life had been changed by God, Jim Irwin.
And Jim took me up the hill just a couple of times, and I met him there in '86, and that's for the third trip.
We're only a day late.
It planted a seed somewhere along the line, and that's kind of been growing.
That seed has been growing ever since. Like Irwin, he was, and is, absolutely convinced that the Ark was somewhere on Mount Ararat proper. Durupinar was a red herring. And when Irwin died, Richard Bright carried on trying to find the Ark on the mountain, while continuing with his day job as a pilot for Continental Airlines.
I do think the structure exists. I'm positive of that. I've put my life on the line here many, many times, and so have a lot of other people. Good, solid, very sharp researchers. And not only just because we're Bible-believing Christians, and we are, but because the research tells you that there's something up there we should pay attention to.
He is even clear what it might look like.
I don't know if it's got SS NOAA stamped on the side, but it's a huge barge-like structure, and it floated up there just high up. It's got a bunch of little rooms inside, and it's very, very old.
Bright has now gone up the mountain over 20 times in the last 30 years and faced many hazards. He is sure it is only God that has kept him alive.
At one point, I remember the rocks, big rocks falling toward me, and I had no place to go. And so I kind of dove behind a little small rock that was about shoulder high. And the rocks had fallen all around me, big boulders. And then I looked up, and I saw the biggest boulder I'd ever seen coming right at me, right here. So I says, "Jesus, Jesus, I need you now, right now, Jesus. Angels' wings, I need you now." Something to that effect. Well, this little rock I was hiding behind was just barely above my shoulders, and this monster landed on top of the rock and skimmed over the top of me. Missed me by less than a foot. And had that rock not been there, I'd be big body parts all over the place.
For other Ark explorers, that might have been enough. But Richard Bright just redoubled his efforts, chasing up every possible lead to where the Ark might be. It was no use. Every time he came down empty-handed. He was beginning to think his quest, like Jim Irwin's, would always be fruitless. But then came hope. The American government released a photo taken by one of their spy planes, which had been kept secret for decades. It showed an unidentified shape high up on the northern slope of Mount Ararat in exactly the same place as many of the most credible sightings had been. Was this the Ark? And then in 2003 came something else. New satellite photos did indeed pinpoint something unnatural that looked a lot like the prow of a boat. It seemed a sign that Bright's long search might finally be coming to an end. And then he met a witness. A Kurdish shepherd told Bright in convincing detail how he had seen the Ark high up on the mountain when he was a child.
There was a shepherd man that took me up to this place. He claimed that 40-some years prior, he'd seen this thing coming up out of the canyon, out of the ice.
It was a long climb back up the slope. Eventually, they reached the glacial plateau, where the shepherd claimed he had seen the ancient boat. Nervously, they ventured forward. Could this really be the Ark? Their hearts sank when they realized the place where the Ark was said to be was now covered by a collection of boulders.
We went up there ultimately and dug a big hole, but we didn't find anything. But the shepherd had dug it with us. He wanted to let us know he was telling the truth, and we don't think the man was lying to us.
Bright believed him and started putting together a team that could uncover the Ark once and for all. But he then realized he had a rival. This team were creationists too, but they were not from the American suburbs, but from Hong Kong, a city known more for its pragmatic commitment to making money than for any biblical belief. They called themselves Noah's Ark Ministries International, and in 2007 they announced a great success. They had found a piece of ancient petrified wood, which they had dated as 4,800 years old. But others were not so sure.
Some of the recent claims by expeditions that have gone there, both the Chinese recently or other expeditions in the last 5 years, have made claims for petrified wood and other things where it's not wood at all, it's stone. And if they had had a geologist with them, he could have told them right then and there, no, don't waste your time, that's just an outcrop of stone.
The Chinese were adamant their specimen was wood and pointed to scientific analysis as proof. Some of Richard Bright's colleagues did join forces with them for a while, but the collaboration didn't last long. Like many climbing arrangements, what sounds good over a cup of mint tea tends to evaporate 15,000 feet up a freezing cold mountain. The Chinese team went back to working on their own with the help of some sympathetic Turks. Soon they claimed an amazing find. Down a gully underneath a glacier, they found the Ark. And they even filmed it.
My initial reaction when I heard the news of the Chinese expedition that had found Noah's Ark was, oh boy, here we go again.
The Chinese video showed their team deep inside a crack in the mountain. Packed within ice walls was a wooden structure consistent in size with that described in the Bible. Jutting up from the cave floor was a wooden beam and a structure containing several wooden compartments.
Yeah.
Back in Hong Kong, the Chinese announced their finding to the world at a press conference. They were 99.9% certain this was the Ark.
The media onslaught was amazing for this. I mean, all of a sudden my phone starts ringing and I've got people calling and Fox News wants to see my opinion and Good Morning America, and it was well beyond the usual. And that was because these people actually had photographic evidence, or so they said.
Suspicions grew when the Chinese would not say where the site actually was. So, making use of the close contacts she had with the families of the Kurdish guides who control the mountain, Amy Bean went to look for herself.
They told everyone that it was a secret place to preserve the archaeological site. They wouldn't let anyone know. So at Camp 2, I just went up there and I filmed it.
She found nothing, nor did anyone else. And skepticism about the Chinese discovery turned to disbelief.
I would say 100% I do not believe it. It was too good to be true. That's the way I would phrase it. It was just too good to be true. We've never seen anything really published since. No scientific article, no backing up of the claims. And then there are fights between the people who took them up Mount Ararat and the ones who didn't. And it just expands. And all of a sudden, you're in this morass of a soap opera, which, you know, if you found Noah's Ark and it's real, it doesn't deserve that.
The Chinese missionaries stand by their discovery and promise all will be revealed soon. If their find does turn out not to be Noah's Ark, it won't be the first time. Many of the Christians who have come to find the Ark in the past have had plenty of money. The Kurdish guides who help them look are poor.
We're sitting in Topçana village, and the guide families live here. The men in the families have to support fairly large families, mother, father, sisters, wife, and children, sometimes 5 or 10 people one guide is supporting. It's hard for them to turn down work. This is their livelihood. And the Ark searchers are coming and coming and coming. And they have money, 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 5,000, 10,000, 50,000. So it's such a temptation.
It is summer in the valley. The snow line has receded on the great mountain of Ararat. Everyone is looking forward to the short tourist season. Soon the climbers will arrive. The Chinese are coming back again, determined to show the world that they really have found the Ark. Other creationist teams are here too, including veteran Noah's Ark explorer Richard Bright, this time with his dream team.
The best on the planet as far as I'm concerned. We've got some wonderful people. These people that know how to climb and get things done. We've got scientists on board this team.
And one of those experts is his real calling card. After many years seeking the Ark alone, he now has the help of a real American star. Randall Price is a distinguished professor of Judaic studies at Liberty University in Virginia. He has a track record of excavating biblical sites, most notably the Dead Sea Scrolls in Qumran in Israel. With Professor Price on board, Bright is convinced that the Ark will soon be found.
I'm of the opinion that, yes, it will be revealed this year. If I didn't believe that, why would I even go, right? Like I said, I'd rather be on the beach.
It is this conviction that keeps driving these Christian Ark searchers on. Despite all the pain and all the cost, their faith tells them that the remains of Noah's Ark will be found up this inhospitable mountain many thousands of miles away from home. The religious sincerity of Ark searchers like Jim Irwin, David Fashold, and Richard Bright is not in doubt, even to those who do not share their beliefs.
Richard Bright is truly searching for something he believes very deeply in. If there's something there, I believe he will find it. When I first met Richard, when he was still trying to convert me, he was always say, "Amy, please open your heart to Jesus. I'm trying to save you before it's too late." But I did say, "Richard, if you find Noah's Ark on that mountain, I'll be a believer."
We don't care who finds it. We don't care what mountain it's on. We just want it found because we believe that it does, in fact, still exist. We're almost there. We're almost there.